honor to meet you, LP Camozzi. And as I mentioned to you before in our virtual green room, I'm sure that I've seen your name somewhere, and I just can't for the life of me recollect where. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a resident of Montreal for the past 20 approximate years. Born in British Columbia, worked in Toronto, worked in BC. And when I moved to Montreal, I decided to become a children's author and entertainer. So I first published a book called, what was it called? It was called Pasta Pazoo, More Better Spaghetti.
Pasta Pazoo, More Better Spaghetti. And can you tell us about that book?
Sure. That book was written for kids who like pasta, but they only really know about spaghetti. So it took them through the world of pasta, and the illustrations were done by my daughter, and some nice, colorful illustrations.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The book was printed in India. Cost 75 cents to print it in India. Mm-hmm. Hardcover. Very popular. Sold out. Basically a bestseller in the province of Quebec. That was my first venture into writing. At the same time, I was starting musically, but I won't get into that too much. I'm a father of 3, grandfather of 5. I've got a couple daughter here in Montreal and a couple kids out in BC, a couple grandkids out there, one here. So been married for 38 years to the same French-Canadian woman I met on a bike trip in New Brunswick.
Oh, congratulations.
So we've been across the country a couple times, and
your progeny is infiltrating the country too now.
Yeah, and they're all successful kids, which is my claim to fame when it comes to my latest book, which we talked about briefly, which is called Hey Daddy.
Right. This book is for you.
Hey Daddy, this book is for you. And it's specifically written for fathers today, based on my background as a father and a grandfather with successful kids, successful marriage, and it's a lighthearted, fun read. Self-published here in Montreal. I've got a really good printer here, and that's the sort of the style of books I'm doing now. Is they're all soft-cover, print on demand, because it's rather than like this book here, which was my second book. It's called Spice Capita, That Dancing Guy, and this was a hardcover, full color, 36-page book, printed in Hong Kong, where you had to print 3,000 books. So if you print that many books, you got to sell that many books eventually. I'm still selling that book, even though it was long listed for the Blue Spruce Awards in Ontario. So. The reason I'm really focusing on Hey Daddy is because Hey Daddy was recently awarded a winner certificate from Canada Book Awards, which
congratulations,
which is based in Ottawa, which makes me a winner. See?
Yep.
But more importantly, it just adds a little bit of credibility to what my goal was, which was to speak directly to fathers. It's not a book for mothers. The mothers all go, what about me? I said, well, there's enough mother books out there to sink a ship. I said, the dads today are who need the help and the encouragement to be fathers. And you and I talked about this briefly. Yeah. But from my perspective, to me, it's a crisis. It's a situation where there's a tremendous imbalance in the world right now. And unfortunately, a lot of the marriages are breaking up when their kids are very young, and or guys aren't interested in getting in relationships, and women aren't interested in getting in relationships with guys who don't want relationships. So there's a lot of disconnects out there in the world of families and parenting, and I wanted to make a statement that would be not pushy, but relied on some research that I had done and a couple things that I've been following for a number of years related to boys falling behind. Mm-hmm. Boys have been falling behind in the school system since my kids were in school, which is 25 years ago, when things started to recognize that for many years the girls were left behind or ignored. The way they treated it is they just basically cut the boys off the back of the bus. And and that's resulted in a lot of problems within, as we said earlier, with relationships and how things are coming together. Unless you have a very strong family unit, and strong family units still succeed. But so those are some of the big picture ideas. But at the end of the day, I've always been interested in kids. My job when I was a teenager was a lifeguard. I used to teach swimming to kids. Singing the music to kids is a real joy for me, to get kids involved and sing about things that affect them, whether it's Big Bad Bully Billy, or whether it's I think I'm in love but I'm not really sure, with the redheaded girl who sits right here next door. These songs all have things that are still bits of my memory going back into my life, and things that I came across living in either West Coast rain conditions or Northern Ontario snow conditions. Those are what prompted the stories in the songs. So, but this being a book thing, I guess the other. So I've shown you my first book, which was Pasta Bazoo, More Better Spaghetti.
Yep.
Second book was Spice Capita, which was a story of a boy who went around the world of dance, and every place he went to reflected the artwork of that country. So, for example, this was the hula thing from Hawaii, and you can see very, very gorgeous images that my now graduated artist daughter had done. So she invested a lot of time in it. The third book, which I haven't shown you yet really in detail, is this one, which is Alpha Bones Candy.
Yes.
And this is a great book because it's an ABC book for parents. Every single page has objects hidden in the illustration that begin with, in this case, the letter E. So kids have to find the objects, and then they can color it. Plus, it teaches them how to write poetry, which is a very simple form of poetry. This has been a really successful book. I just haven't had enough time to sell it, but it's definitely something that I would, given the opportunity in Ottawa, if we ever have the show up there, to present that to people. It's always been I did very well with it at Christmas this year, and I hadn't seen a lot of people for a long time. So other than that, I'm basically healthy, and I like to play tennis. I like to ski. I like to stay alive in this age of
COVID-19.
Yeah. And by the way, I also have a full-time job. I'm directly involved in some of the things that are affect there. So.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. I work for a company based in British Columbia called Nemex, which is a seller of medicinal mushroom extracts grown, processed, and produced in China and delivered into the United States. So most of our customers are in the U.S. And our business has been steadily increasing over the last 5 years as more and more people understand the value of these products, and aging baby boomers who want solutions to their health in an herbal way. So this is all herbal medicine. So it's my day job. I work from my home in Montreal and deal with customers mainly across the United States. And my background is in advertising and marketing, and so I've got a pretty good resume when it comes to the business side of my life. But when I retire, my only business is going to be outside and writing books, hopefully for kids and their parents, and whatever else might come to mind. Who knows? I might actually write a novel someday. That's when I have the time to do it. So.
LP, can you talk a little bit more about your motivation for being a children's author? I know when you spoke about, hey, Daddy, this book is for you, you were reflecting on your own experiences as a father and a grandfather, and this lack or this deficit in current Western society regarding the role of the father. Can you talk to us a little bit more about maybe what experiences have motivated you to become a children's author?
Well, probably first and foremost is that I was bullied really badly when I was a kid. I wore glasses from the time I was 16 months old because I had an eye problem. So when you wore glasses in 1952 or 54 when you went to school, you were one of a kind because it just didn't exist. So I took a lot of heat for a long time as a young kid growing up, just dealing with people either wanting to beat you up and or whatever. The good thing was that, plus I was a smart kid in school, but the combination of that bullying, I think, affected me in many ways in terms of actually working up to my potential. Because when you get bullied by people, you tend to try to fit in and you do this and do that. So, plus I had seen and witnessed as a parent being part of the parent-teacher committees in where my kids grew up. I could start to see how the girls rightfully were getting much better treatment and encouraged to do a lot more things that they weren't doing before. But unfortunately, a lot of boys were falling off the apple cart. So I wanted to write things that would appeal to boys and girls, but I wanted to be able to sing to both of them. I wanted to be able to encourage both of them to do what they want to do. Because I like kids. I've always liked kids. I've got successful kids. I came from a family of 7 kids. So these are all things that were probably part of why I wanted to do this. And I think it's still evolving. I think, who knows where it will go. But I know that I have a very good rapport with children. And if you've ever seen any of my stuff on video, then you would see that, just the kids like me. So, but it's tricky, there's so much paranoia that's been created over the years about being involved in the school system and what have you. It's a very touchy subject. And the other key thing that motivates me, I'll tell you right now, is that what we've witnessed in the public elementary school system in Canada is basically that male teachers have been dumped off the back of the apple cart. So the children today are largely being taught by women, which is fine, except there's not enough male role models in the system. And if there's not enough male role models in the system, then the system falls apart. And we get into the situation that we started this conversation with, which is that if we now have a situation where women today who are successful and rightfully so can't, quote unquote, can't find decent men. I don't know how many times I've heard that quote.
Mm-hmm.
All I got to do is go back 20 years and see how it started, and go back another 15 years and see how male teachers could get thrown out of the school. If a kid went to the parent and said, "Daddy, this man touched me in the school," or "Mommy," the school would immediately toss out that male teacher until it was resolved. So that's improved somewhat now, but there's still a very big gap between the percentage of women teachers in the elementary school systems and the male teachers. So, and I think that contributes to all the things we're talking about, because women teach differently than men. And,
absolutely.
So those are. I mean, I'm not picketing anybody on it and going on a campaign about it, but and I benefit from it because I can get invited to a school because there's maybe the only guys in the school are the janitors.
Mm-hmm.
I can go in and say, "Hey kids, I'm a daddy. I got 3 kids just like you. They're all growing up now. This is where some of the things we did. Boys and girls. See if you can do it there." So, combination of being bullied as a kid, being creative. I mean, I'm a writer by profession, advertising writer by profession, marketing writer, but want to do something more fun. Plus, plus it's a people thing, I love going to doing things where I'm sitting at a show or a fair, and I get to talk to parents, and I get to ask them to have their kids see if they can find a couple objects in Alpha Bones candy, and see them get it. Like it's quite an interesting process. Because I do visits to chapter stores occasionally, actually fairly regularly, but I'm trying to get out of it. But it's just because it's so much work. But you can get families where they'll come in and you'll have two brothers or two kids that are 4 and 5 respectively, or 6 and 4 or whatever, and some of them can't read a word in this book. Can't read a word. And then you get another kid who'll come in with his mom, and he's obviously been well trained, and he's obviously wants to learn about words. A, he can read the poem. B, he can find the objects because he wants to find the objects. And C, he wants to take it home because he can learn how to write a complete thing in the back. And he is an exception to the rule. There's a lot of, I don't know how they're doing it now, but there's a lot of young kids today that are in that absolutely critical 4 to 8 age group. They can't read. Can't read well enough, So now I'm not talking about private schools. That's a different thing.
Right.
I'm talking about the public system. So, and I'm not wanting to talk about too much because I'm going to be blacklisted. But, those are things. You asked the question. I think I've given you enough.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of your most memorable experiences as a father and how that manifested in your book? Hey, Daddy, this book is for you.
Well, one of the first things mentioned in the book is that I, as a father, my first daughter was born in she's going to get me now.
Yep, that's it now.
Yeah, either way.
She's the artist?
My first daughter is now 38, so whatever the year was. But when my wife was pregnant, I went into the maternity ward to help her deliver the baby, which was unheard of in those days. It was just like the woman goes in with the women, and the men go outside and smoke cigars with the guys. But I was there at the very beginning of fathers wanting to be part of the birth process, and my wife gave birth naturally to the kids, so it was quite an
experience. Yeah.
So that was certainly an influencing factor in it. The other thing is that as I quit a very good job living in Vancouver, I had a very successful career in Toronto for 10 years in the advertising business, and being born in British Columbian, one of my kids wasn't healthy in Toronto. We wanted to try something new, and I asked my wife what she wanted to do. She could have said, let's go to Quebec, but she'd seen some of the pictures I'd done shooting commercials in Vancouver, and she said, that might be a good place to go. So we packed up the kids and we moved to Vancouver for the health of my kids and also for a change. But as it turned out, the people who hired me and we didn't quite get along, so I was out of a job a year into it, actually 9 months into it. And I said, screw it, I'm going to run my own business. So I started my own one-man ad agency, worked out of the basement, helped take care of the kids, and I've been that way since 1986, I guess, on my own. So, but we never had any money. So we never had any money. So what did we do? We loaded up the kids and we went to the beach, and we went to the forest, and we went to the snow, and we went to where you could pick blueberries, and we spent as much possible time as we could with our kids. We also, and one of the things which is in the book, and this is another significant aspect of why I wrote the book is because when very shortly after we moved to Vancouver, we came across a poster on a just a signpost.
Mm-hmm.
And the title on the poster was "Retire at 13."
Okay.
And it was put on by I believe a PhD student and/or somebody who was a practicing professor at UBC that I've never managed to uncover since. But going to that event changed our life, because the basic premise of his presentation was that, based on international study, was that even though in Canada there might be a 12-year-old girl who's going through the process, going to university, what have you, in other countries that same 12-year-old girl might already be a mother.
Mm.
And yet what his study proved was that there's not a lot of difference between the 12-year-old North American girl and the 12-year-old Indian girl or African girl.
Mm.
Excuse me one sec.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Come on in, just go downstairs. I'll catch up on you. I'm in a meeting. Thanks. Sorry, I'll go back to that because I just had company come in, but actually plumbers. I got flooded out here yesterday. So.
Oh, I thought it was the mushroom delivery man.
No, that's another story. So anyway, the long and short of how I really was motivated with working with children, and this was a lot related to that point in our life where we were taught by this guy, who I still never found him again, but that your kids are basically done by the time they're 13 years old. There's very little you can do with them after that point. So the key is, if you're going to be a good father and a good mother, what you need to do is invest as much upfront time as you can with the kids, like 0 to 8 at the very minimum, on all the kinds of things I just talked about.
Right.
And what that does is it forms the children. It starts to teach them the different roots. It gets them established, teaches them to read. We piled books on our kids, as my parents did to me. So, but his point was well taken. By the time and we've run across these situations too, my wife and I, where somebody's got 2 boys, 14 and 12 or whatever, and they are complete hellions. They've had problems with the police. And it wasn't for a shortage of money. It was a shortage of parental attention. So my primary goal with this book, and if I die talking about it, is going to be, if you want good, successful, healthy, wealthy kids, you need to invest in them early. Because if you wait too long and you just try to buy them off, you give them all the toys they want, all the gizmos, all the trips to Vegas or to wherever they're going to go, It's great, but how much real time are you giving them in terms of the basics? And this is, if I had I had a mission right now, my mission in my later years would be to talk to people about this and say, listen, this is what you have to do, parents. This is really what's going to make a difference in your life with your family. At the same time, it's not a lecture.
Right.
This book is not a lecture. There's lots of humor. There's lots of things in it, like you've already asked questions about what did you do with your kids, and some of those things are listed off in there.
Okay.
But it's an easy read. It's about a 4.5 hour read. I sell it for $23, shipping included.
So how do we obtain a copy of your book then?
You personally, or your
a viewer in general.
A viewer in general can get the book through PayPal. Just go to PayPal, and you're going to want to look for lpcamozzi@gmail.com is my address.
Okay. lpcamozzi@gmail.com.
Gmail.com is the link in PayPal, and then they can send me $23, and I will package up a book in a nice little envelope that looks like this. And they go in there. The book goes in there. I ship it to them after I get their money, and everybody's happy.
Thank you for the step-by-step. Appreciate that. Pete, what advice would you give a father who is separated from the rest of the family, so to speak? So perhaps he doesn't have custody, separated or divorced from the mother of the children, because in this day and age, that seems to be far more common than it was decades ago, or they were.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, and I've seen it, I've witnessed it. I think we've had this situation in our family with one of our girls, and I won't get into the details on it, but at the end of the day, in this case, what I think is working is that he has custody rights, and he has attention rights, and he has as much of a chance of spending time with his son as his daughter, as my daughter does. And that's taken a while to work that through. Unfortunately, it's a significant issue, because sometimes the breakup is tough, and it's ugly, and the dads get cut out. I mean, I've seen it in Montreal. There's a movement in Montreal at one point because the fathers just weren't getting a fair shake. So I think it's on an individual basis. I think that that has to be worked out between the two combatants, if you will. But the other thing that has worked with people who because I helped mentor a client of mine one time who was, a marriage just wasn't working. And, but I said, I helped her to try to get some therapy, try to get the two of them involved in therapy. Still didn't work. But ultimately, I think the one piece of advice that I noticed from another friend who'd gone through it when I was in Toronto is that they stayed relatively close to each other geographically, so that you could, in this case, their son got a little bit older, he had an automatic choice of being able to go to either of the two residences because they were reachable. So as opposed to a situation where a father today might be, if I was in Montreal, maybe he lives on the South Shore and the woman lives on the island. Mm-hmm. And it's complicated to get it there. And the other thing is, I guess you just have to get over the anger. I mean, that's not easy. You need to have some counseling probably. And fortunately, my wife and I have managed to survive our 38 years together. But I think part of that is that we give each other the space that we want and need at times, So, yeah, and to be fair, though, it's not easy. I look at my parents' generation, and there were many couples who, they had 4, 5, 6, 7 kids, and finally the woman said, "That's it, Charlie. We're not having any more kids. If you want some action, go get it wherever you like, and I love you, I'm going to stay with you." But so, and it's gone from that to of course, to having the tools to not get pregnant. But if you go from that standpoint, and my dad in those days, he worked his ass off at night to try and feed 3 kids, selling life insurance. So. We saw my dad once a week, basically, for an extended time. But that extended time was a full, intensive day with Dad, and we did everything. And my mother got a day's break. And everybody's different. Every couple today is different. I don't think there's any specific plan. But mm-hmm. when it comes to your children, they're pretty smart. They figure it out pretty soon in life as to what's going on, and mm-hmm. and it's not easy. It's just not easy. So it's not. I can't really go beyond that because I haven't gone into that space. But I will say that it's an unfortunate balance in a lot of cases, where there's not enough time for dad, and there's not enough time for dad to bring, especially when it's a boy. That's boys need their dads to give them direction and what have you.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit? And I'll be careful how I word this question. But are there things that are uniquely contributed by the father, or predominantly contributed by the father, that are necessary to the upbringing of children, and specifically sons, as you were saying?
Well, it's in the book.
You're a marketer, all right.
Just to remind.
All right.
To be honest, what's in the book, and what I did as the father figure in the family, was that I basically constantly tried to fool my kids, entertain my kids, pretend I was King Kong Bundy and wrestle them on the floor.
Oh man, I remember that name.
Yeah, and Dad's the jerk. Dad should be the jerk. Mom is the disciplinarian when it comes right down to it. I mean, she gave birth, she fed them, she taught them, she cared for them, she loved them, she wiped them down. Dad was the class clown. If Dad can be the class clown in the book, then you end up. We used to attract. I'm not saying my wife never went with me, because she did. We were going to go for a walk, and I would have a handful of candies or cookies in my pocket, and I would take the kids to the tree, and I'd say, you know what, this is the cookie tree. And the kids would say, what's a cookie tree? I said, well, if we really reach into the tree, of course you have a little sleight of hand in there, and you go and you say a few magic words, you could get a cookie. Oh, so the next time we wanted to go for a walk with the kids, who in today's world say, I don't want to go for a walk, I want to play with my tablet. Say, no, we're going to go for a walk to the cookie tree. Oh, let's go to the cookie tree. Now, at some point, the kids are smart enough to realize that they're getting scammed, and they call your bluff. Okay, that's the part of it is teaching your kids to call the bluff, because when they call the bluff, they step into another stage in their life, and they understand. They figured out what Dad was trying to say to them without Dad ramming it down their throats.
Yes. I remember figuring out the nature of Santa Claus when Santa Claus left my brother and I a note written in my father's handwriting, and I was 5. I was 5. But it was okay. I understood the intentions. But speaking of tablets, so I think it was in The Boy Problem, the book, was that Will Ferrell who wrote that? He mentions about ADHD really being, in the majority of cases, impaired dopamine function. So with the amount of stimulus kids get today and the surges in dopamine at the touch of a button, what's your feeling on that, and what role a parent, and even specifically a father, can play in dealing with this different challenge?
Again, in the book, there's a short section, because I did some research, and one of the two of the research places that I got good information, I think one was University of Calgary, and the other one was I think it was like a parental site in Toronto. But basically, both of them said the same thing. Kids under the age of 6 should not be exposed to tablets. And if they are, at a very, very minimal level, because it fries their little brains. And all you have to do is look at an adult today like me. I'm on screen way too often. And it's just, but the experts are saying your children it's great to give them a phone or whatever, but the amount of time they have on that thing should be severely limited. Like we're talking max 30 minutes a day, or maybe a second day or something like that. And let the brain develop. If you don't let the brain develop, then you gotta, Now, having said that, I've met children who are who have had the combination of good parenting, tablets, private school education, whatever. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant kids, eons ahead of where our kids are, where I was. But it's because they have a balance,
right?
And it's I don't, I'm seeing some kids today that are just like, there's no way they're going to manage them. I mean, it's you give them everything they want. It's like the two kids I was telling you about, my wife, two boys, 12 and 14, all sorts of trouble. They'd been given everything they could ever imagine in their life. Beautiful house, lots of money, lots of vacations, no time from the parents. And at the end of the day, one of the parents ended up having to stay at home to prevent the kids from either burning the house down, hosting a big party, or doing something that was going to put them back in the juvenile jail system. We're talking about parents who are university educated, skilled in their own world, but so there's lots of pitfalls. And so it's sort of, if we were going to wrap up the conversation, I'd say this is a fundamental part of Hey Daddy is retire at 13. And if you want to do that, and if you want to have great kids, your odds are significantly improved if you devote maximum time and energy to those kids, which is quite frankly what you should be doing if you're having a decision to have a kid. They're not another piece of furniture in your custom-made townhouse overlooking Toronto Harbor. They're a human being that needs to be taught how to grow up. And that's sorely missing, unfortunately, in a lot of places. It's not the only thing. The whole system has to adjust as well. It's the other aspect.
LP, just before we wrap up here, is there any message specifically for grandparents in your book? And you, having been and are a grandparent, is there anything that grandparents have to deal with that parents wouldn't, or approaches that a grandparent would take that a parent would not? I mean, some people are raised by their grandparents, right?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
There's certainly overlap here, but
yeah, and it's in some places it's absolutely necessary, whether it's single moms or single fathers, and they need to have that support level. Well, I don't know. I as a grandfather, I honestly think that it almost goes back to when you were a father. Like when I was a father and I was doing things like the cookie tree. When I'm a grandfather, I can do that kind of stuff with my grandson, but he doesn't really know where it came from. And I'm not sort of using it. It's just that it's there. It's something and grandparents do this with their kids. They spoil the hell out of them, because they love their grandchildren. And to me, it's got being a grandparent has the same fun aspect that it did for a young parent taking their kids to the beach on a Saturday when their kids were 3 or 4. Now they've got another set of kids. So I think the short answer to the question is either make up for what you didn't do as a parent because you were too busy, too preoccupied, too money oriented or whatever, and you went through problems with your kids, or do the things that were the most fun with your children, with your grandchildren, because it worked with your children. And that's that's what a lot of them do, including my wife. I mean, she's happy to spend 2 days over, even though she's still working full time. If my daughter needs help, she'd be over playing games, making stuff up, teaching, reliving your youth. That's what grandparenting kids is about. So.
Lucky grandchildren.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to say, Patrick Leonard?
Well, I'd just like to say I hope we all get out of this, we can all get back to some sort of normalcy with all this corona stuff going on. And that's going to be a terrible problem for so many people because their kids can't go to daycare, the parents can't. So we'll see if that changes our world in any way, too.
Do you have any advice on dealing with this for parents that have their children with them now and would otherwise have them in school?
Well, maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's even taking out the financial side of it, because that's the challenge. They're going to be the real challenge, because there's way too many people that are stretched to the nines these days, and they really don't have any safety valve. And I know what it's like, because it's taken me a long time to get back to being an entrepreneur. I know what it's like to, go to the bank machine and put the card in and put in your number and hope that there's money there. So it's going to be a major upheaval that's going on right now. So, and kids need to be protected. They need to be cared for, same as they always do. And and they're not going to understand because they can't go to school. So that's got to be there. So maybe that's a place where families have to come together, because you've got the technology now. So if everybody needs to do something, then form a network, get your, hook up with your family, talk to each other every day to relieve everybody's stress, because the grandparents are stressed out because they just lost their ton of money in their retirement plan.
Right.
The families are pissed off because they're not going to get any money from the family plan when their parents are, it's not the money thing, but it is a money thing. It's not going to, you need to go back and rely on the simple things in life and in your family. And I remember I could just hear my mother talking to me now about when she grew up with 12 to 10 kids or to 11 kids in the family, grew up in the Dust Bowl in the prairies, were forced out of the Dust Bowl in the 30s and to move to BC. And the only place they could afford to live in was a farmhouse that had been used as a pigsty, and they had to clean it out. And they lived there for 30 years raising 11 kids, and all those kids are successful kids.
Wow.
So all the kids were involved in the farm and in the family and the crops and survival. Half of them didn't have shoes. We're such a spoiled world now. We've got everything and we've got it instantly. But when you really talk to grandparents about what it was like, and this will be the last thing I'm going to say. My mother was a very wise woman, and her take on today's world, she said to me a while back before she passed away, was the problem with today's world is there's too many choices. And everybody wants those choices. And they get all the choices, and then it all blows up. Because they tried to have too many choices. Keep it simple. And buy the book.
Your website, LP, tell us about your website.
Website is lpcamozzi.com.
Thank you.
You've got the spelling there, so make sure that gets up properly. And I really enjoyed the interview. I thought you did a great job, and I appreciate this opportunity. And I look forward to being in Ottawa, hopefully, once all the dust settles and we're at the book fair. And like I said, I've got, all three of these books are available to be shipped to people.
Okay.
This one is $23, including shipping and tax. This one is $21, including shipping and tax.
Okay.
This one is $19, including shipping and tax.
Okay.
So basically, they're all very good value books. All had some sort of winner thing attached to them, but this is my mission.
Understood. Understood, LP. It's been an honor, and I look forward to meeting you in Ottawa. Thank you for your insights, and stay safe at this time.
I will. You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are you a writer? Are you seeking to self-publish high-quality and mass-marketable books? Would you like to avoid the typical low-quality self-published book that generally sells less than 50 copies? Here are top 10 ways Agora will make your book look like a potential bestseller. AgoraPublishing.com services include: number 1, ISBN registration. 2, cataloging in publication or CIP registration. Number 3, books in print basic for Canada and the US. Number 4, books in print international to get your book sold with online booksellers internationally. Number 5, copy editing for basic grammar and typos. Number 6, substantive editing for style revamping and other consulting. Number 7, typesetting, layout, and graphic design essential for that professional look. Number 8, book cover design. Number 9, book website and author blog design along with search engine optimization, often just called SEO, and also search engine marketing, otherwise known as SEM. 10, AgoraPublishing.com even provides book distribution, agency services, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Go to AgoraPublishing.com today and find out how they can make you a great selling author. That's AgoraPublishing.com. AgoraPublishing.com.